And now I'm looking down towards turn 5, which is the 90-degree bend into the back straight, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, now I got to let her rip. And so I put my foot down, and the next thing I know, the car has turned 90 degrees sideways. And did it brake towards the infield? Of course not. It broke and started going off track to the left, right towards the guardrail. So in April of 2018, I bought myself a 2000 Corvette Convertible. Red, tan leather interior, automatic transmission, 44,000 miles on it. Found it at a dealer in Jackson, Michigan. Paid 17 grand for it. And it basically was bought to be a daily driver. This would be the 4th Corvette my wife and I had owned over the course of the last 20 years or so. Anyways, I start driving the car in April and May, but the beginning of June, I ended up having to go in for open heart surgery. So doctors discovered I had a leaky mitral valve that had to be repaired, and so I went in, had my open heart surgery, everything is fixed and fine, but the car spent the month of June basically sitting in the garage while I recuperated at home. So by July, I'm going back to work, and I happen to be at a local Chamber of Commerce meeting, and I run into my friend Chuck. Now, Chuck is the CEO of a local automotive supplier, and Chuck is a car guy. And so I'm telling him about the Corvette, and Chuck is then saying, hey, you know, my friends and I rent out a local racetrack on Mondays after a race weekend, and you ought to come out and join us next time. We're doing it in August. And I said, that's fantastic. Sign me up. So on August 13th, 2018, I show up at Waterford Hills Race, which is a track in actually Clarkston, Michigan, that was opened in 1958. And one of the interesting stories about this track is Sir Sterling Moss was there in 1961. He had just completed running in the very first Canadian Grand Prix. And he had a speech to give in Detroit, and so he was invited to come to the track. And he ran a bunch of laps, and he came in and said, wow, this is a tough technical track. And if you can go fast at Waterford Hills, you can go fast anywhere. So I roll into Waterford Hills about 10 a.m. and I can see around the paddock. This is going to be a lot of fun. Along with a couple of Corvette race cars and that sort of thing, I see a Camaro ZL1 1LE. I see a Porsche Cayman GT4. I see a Ferrari 488. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is going to be really cool. So the very first thing we do is we all gather in the tower off the paddock, and they have a classroom. And the instructor for all of us was Danny Kellermeyer. And Danny and Chuck had been friends for many years. And Danny is a professional Corvette race car driver. So Danny pulls up his slides and shows us the track and talks about the proper line and going through each of the turns, and talks about, for those of us who are newbies like me, about the different flags and what they mean. He stresses to all of us that today is about having fun. Today is not about racing. I don't want to see any passing going on except on the back straight. And when you pass, if you are the slower car and you see someone come up behind you, I want you to pull over to the right on the back straight. I want you to wave them by out your window and then pull back in line and keep going. So he's going through the track and talking about the different turns, and he gets to turn 4. And turn 4 is called Hilltop. And as the name suggests, you are cresting up over a hill. And he says, this is the turn that the most mistakes are made and is the most technical turn on the track, because it is an off-camber turn, meaning when you crest over that hill, that track is sloping away from you and towards the guardrail, not banking towards the infield. Anyways, he gets done with the classroom work, and we all go downstairs, and now he does something called lead follow. So in lead follow, Danny jumps in his pickup truck, and he lined 6 cars up behind him and gave everybody a 2-way radios. And he says, we're going to go out on the track, I'm going to show you the proper line, and then each one of you is to follow me, and I'm going to tell you what you're doing wrong as we go around the track. And when we get to the back straight, I'm going to have you pull over, allow everybody else to go past, you drop in the back of the line so that each person gets 1 full lap of instruction. So we go out and do that. And instead of me jumping in my own car and following him, I decide, you know what? I'm going to jump in the cab with Danny so that I can pay attention to what he's saying with lines and that sort of thing. So that's what I did. We did 7 laps that way. And then we all came in, and then the track opens up. So at this point, my friend Chuck, who had invited me, he has a C7 Corvette Grand Sport with a stick. And he's about to go out and run his first laps of the day and says, why don't you come out and join me? And so he loans me his helmet. I put the helmet on and jump in the passenger seat, and we go out and run 3 or 4 laps. And he's pretty quick. And we come in, take a break. He then suggests, hey, why don't you jump in with my friend John, who works at GM. He's got some racing experience, and he's got a Z06. So we jump in a Z06. I think it was a 6th generation C6 Z06. And we run some laps. So I ride 3 or 4 laps with John, and he comes in. And then Danny Kellermeyer decides he is going to give rides in his race car. So his 6th generation Corvette race car has a passenger seat mounted in it with a 5-point harness. And so I climb in the vehicle, and they teach me how to put the harness on. And he says, okay, Tom, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to go out on the track, and I'm going to do a lap. And then I'm going to give you a thumbs up. And you have to give me a thumbs up back if you want me to go faster. Then the second lap, I'll go faster, and I'm going to do a thumbs up again, and you have to give me a thumbs up if you want me on the 3rd lap to go even faster. And so that's what we did. And so, of course, I'm all thumbs up. 3 laps of that, and we came in, and I have to tell you, 3 laps in that car, and my neck was sore from the G-forces that you go through. And I'm thinking to myself, dude, Danny, you are 70 years old doing this. I am super impressed. So now my adrenaline's pumping, and I get out of the car, and I'm having a great time. And my buddy Chuck says, hey, you ought to jump in your car and go out on the track. And I'm going, no, you know what? I don't want to be the slowest guy on the track. I don't want to hold other people up. He goes, no, look, we're here to have a good time. You should jump in your car, do a few laps, have a good time. On the back straight, just wave people by. They understand. Okay, so I decide to do it. So I pull into the pit lane, and I'm watching the flagman, and he's waiting for an opening on the track where he can wave me out there. Now, my adrenaline is pumping. I've just gotten out of a Corvette race car, and I have not mentally reset myself to the fact I am in a 2000 Corvette Convertible that does not perform anywhere near the 3 vehicles that I have just ridden in. So, flagman gives me the go, and I am balls to the wall onto the racetrack. Through 1, 2, 3, I'm fine. I'm following what I think is the right line. I can hear the tires squealing a bit, but it doesn't concern me. And now I'm approaching 4 and Hilltop. And fortunately, my brain clicks in momentarily and reminds me, oh yeah, this is the one Danny warned me about. And so I kind of cautiously go up and over Hilltop. And now I'm looking down towards turn 5, which is the 90-degree bend into the back straight, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, now I got to let her rip. And so I put my foot down, and the next thing I know, the car has turned 90 degrees sideways. And did it brake towards the infield? Of course not. It broke and started going off track to the left, right towards the guardrail. And so I'm sliding. Now, I don't know how fast I'm going, probably 30 to 40 miles an hour, and I'm going sideways across the grass, and here comes the guardrail, and bang, rips the front end of the Corvette off. It turns the car, bounces the passenger quarter panel, and spins the car back out into the racetrack, and I'm pointed down track, and the car comes to a stop. And I'm like, son of a... And I'm banging on the steering wheel because I'm pissed off. And then I pause for a second, and I look around and realize, now hold on a sec. Airbags didn't go off. None of the windows appear to be broken. Let's see if my door opens. Grab door handle. Driver's door opens, no problem. I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's not as bad as I think it is. I get out of the car and I take my helmet off and I walk around to the front and realize, oh yeah, it's as bad as I think it is. I have torn the whole front end off. The radiator and the battery are sitting on the ground. I walk around to the passenger side. I see the damage to the passenger quarter panel where it hit the guardrail. I look back at the guardrail. The whole top section of the guardrail's been ripped off. And by now, the track worker that was stationed at Hilltop jumps in his truck, pulls out on the track, maybe 50 feet behind me, jumps out of his truck, runs up to check on me, make sure I'm okay. And he says, look, I want you to sit in my cab while we inspect the car and the damage and everything and make sure there isn't going to be a fire or anything. And so he walks me back to the cab and sits me in the passenger seat while he goes back to my car and starts clearing debris and checking in case of a fire, which there wasn't. And I sat there for maybe a minute and said, oh, to hell with this. And I got out of the truck and walked back to the vehicle so that I could look at the damage that I'd done. By now, there are other cars showing up, and I look back at Hilltop, and I can see the Cayman GT4 and the Ferrari 488 sitting there because there's so much debris on the track, they can't even creep by me. And so the team, they start clearing the debris, and next thing I know, my friend Chuck comes running up and gives me a big bear hug and says, oh, thank God, you're all right. I'm like, Chuck, I'm fine, only my ego is destroyed. So at this point, they put me in the vehicle, take me back to the paddock, put me back up in that classroom so that the medical person can then spend 15 minutes with me while my adrenaline kind of cools off, make sure I don't feel any pain anywhere, asks me a series of questions to make sure that, you know, I'm cognizant of what had happened and where I'm at and all that. And I'm like, I'm fine. The only pain I felt at all, which I didn't even mention at the time, turned out I had bruised the inside of both feet. And the best I can figure is when I impacted and spun it around, my feet banged off the brake pedal, and that's what bruised the inside of both feet. So now as I'm sitting up there, and she kind of gets done with her evaluation, now comes the hard part, calling my wife. So I pull my cell phone out, and I'd shoot her a text, hey, you know, give me a call when you get a chance, need to talk to you. She calls me right away. I'm like, dear, I just want to let you know, there's been an accident at the racetrack. I've totaled the Corvette. And she's like, are you okay? And I said, yes, dear, I'm fine. She says, okay. She's like, do you have a ride home? And I'm like, yep, one of the guys here is going to drop me off on his way home. And she says, okay, well, I'm working out tonight, so I'll see you when I get home. And that's the moment you know you've married a saint. So she would later say that I knew I didn't need to beat him up and give him a hard time because I knew internally he was beating himself up over it. And you know what? It's just a car. It's replaceable. It's okay. So at this point, we call a tow truck and we have a flatbed show up and we have it hauled to the repair center at Maddox Chevrolet, which is a dealer I deal with in Redford, Michigan. And the next day I call my insurance agent and explain what happened. And the insurance agent says, okay, well, we're going to file a claim on this because you said it wasn't a race. I said, no, there was no timing going on. This was a driver education event. And so she put the claim in, and sure enough, they sent an agent out to inspect the vehicle, determined it was totaled, and within 24 hours, Allstate had wired the money to my bank account, which then allowed me to go out and buy the 2007 Le Mans Blue 3LT automatic that you see in these pictures, which I like a whole lot better than that convertible. In fact, I've had it on the racetrack a few times in 2019 and 2020. And so that is my story of crashing my 2000 Corvette convertible on a racetrack 2 months after open heart surgery and having the insurance company pay for it. My name is Tom Stroup. This has been Find the Right Road. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed that video, please click the like button and consider subscribing to my channel. And we'll catch you next time.